Now, if you don't play a lot of video games or don't read a lot of video game news, you probably don't know that there was a game that recently got refused classification by the Classification Board, essentially rendering illegal for sale in Australia. The game, which is called Outlast 2, is the fifth game to be refused classification since Australia got an R18 rating for video games back in 2011. Yes, games have only been recognised as an adult medium for about 6 years now. So is 5 too many? Or is it proof that the board is actually stopping some rather heinous games from entering the country? Senator David Leyonhjelm, a man who's obviously very vocal about personal freedoms, joins me on the phone. Senator, in your speech, you note that there's a big disconnect between the ongoing idea that games are for kids and the fact that an average gamer is well into his 30s. Should the R18 rating have stopped these issues and stopped us having conversations about refused classification?
Yes, in theory it should have. The Classification Board tends to be relatively, and I use that word advisedly, relatively grown up when it comes to movies. But on games, it would appear that they are still under the assumption that people who play video games are children. And our classification or not, that thinking seems to have pervaded their approach to classification.
So
the end result is we're getting stuff banned, which if it was a movie, I don't think it would be banned. They would just apply an R classification, say children under 18 are not allowed in, and adults can go and watch it if they want to. But because it's a video game, they seem to have a different mentality.
The argument is that, of course, the interactivity of video games makes an impact difference. I mean, do you think that's got any merit?
It's a relatively common assumption. There's no basis in science for it. You know, the theory is you watch somebody killing somebody, then you'll then go out, or you're more likely to go out and kill someone yourself. That's actually been examined by sociologists quite a number of times. There's absolutely no basis for it at all. And yet it does seem to influence policymakers and the bureaucrats quite a lot, this attitude that if a video game is violent, therefore you'll turn into some sort of violent person.
You've also commented, Senator, that in a government that's supposedly pro-innovation, this sets a wrong message for a video game industry.
Yes, it does. Some of the video gamers are Australian, and they're not getting any help at all, any encouragement at all. There's almost I don't know whether it's ignorance or prejudice, frankly. I'm not sure what the explanation is. But there's just no acknowledgement that video gamers, or developers of video games, I should say, are in some cases Australians. They are legitimate businesses. They employ Australians. They pay taxes. They do all the normal things that any small business does, a developing business does, and they deserve support. And instead, what they cop from the government is regulations, and in some cases bans of their products. It's unacceptable.
Is there an odd disconnect between a government that's looking to make significant changes to, say, 18C of the Racial Discrimination Act, but then still continues this, what you seem to think of as a very protectionist attitude when it comes to what media we can consume?
Well, 18C is about free speech rather than sort of being exposed to other people's speech. The issue with video classification, game classification, and movies for that matter, and books and reading material and so forth is the intended purpose is to prevent inadvertent exposure to it. So the idea is that you shouldn't be exposed to sex or violence or nudity or any of those sorts of things if you don't want to, and in particular, children shouldn't be exposed to it without the knowledge of their parents. And so that's the intention of it, rather than to suppress speech itself, which is more relating to the arguments around 18C. So I can understand the difference between them, but the point about it, of course, is that they say, well, if it's a movie and it contains things that we don't think children should be exposed to, we can control that via the classification, and in particular the R classification means that children are not allowed to watch it in a cinema. But video games, they just don't seem to have got it through their heads who is playing video games, that they are grown-ups, they're not children, and there's nothing to be achieved by this approach, this nanny state approach of banning stuff that they don't like.
Senator, thank you for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, thank you.
Senator David Leyonhjelm there, talking about video game censorship. Yet another game refused classification. I say yet another. It is indeed only the fifth. But is that 5 too many? Should we be allowed to play exactly what we want to play when the average age of a gamer, as I believe I said, is 33 years old?